Right, in the previous clip, I described briefly what is called the labour theory of value and said in Marx it is also a value theory of labour. And I want to explain what I mean by this. So I said what is going on in exchange is that the labour time embodied in these gloves or in this smartphone is equated with the labour time embodied in this apple. Now, in the first place, if you go and work in an orchard with apple trees, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how long you work, you will not make a smartphone. If you go to a glove factory and you work really hard, you will not produce any apples. So you're not equating the particular activities. What you are doing is equating a certain amount of the labour of society used in a glove factory or in an apple orchard. You're saying you have a certain number of people working in apple orchards, a certain number of people working in glove factories. From time to time, people move between these different uses. The total social pool of labour power is moved between these different uses. And what's happening in exchange is that allocation of labour is being regulated through the market. Now, the further point that Marx made is when commodity production becomes general, that is, most of the things that you deal with are commodities, as opposed to commodities being the exception in the useful things you consume. When that happens, there is a change also in the character of labour. He puts this very dramatically in an unfinished text he wrote by saying that labour, in its modern form, he says, only exists fully in the United States. Why does he say it only exists fully in the United States? Because he thought that in the United States, where you had no pre-capitalist remnants, had the greatest fluidity of the movement of labour power. That workers moved from one job to another, which was in its particular concrete form quite different, most fluidly. That you had labour power as a generality there expressed in 1,000, 1,000,000 different particular activities. But what they had in common was they were using up a certain amount of the labour power of society. So Marx sums this up by saying that in a society where commodities are general, labour has two different natures. It's abstract labour and it's concrete labour. Concrete labour is a particular useful activity, and it may not be abstract labour, or as Marx calls it somewhere else, universal social labour, always. So, for example, I and others are doing some work here producing this video clip. It's not going to be sold. It doesn't enter into the sphere of commodity production. It's concrete labour, but not abstract labour. A great deal of housework is generally concrete labour and not abstract labour. But in capitalist society, when we talk about going to work, or I'm working so many hours this week, I'm working this shift this week, what we mean by that is it's both concrete labour. You cannot turn up to work and tell the boss, sorry boss, I'm just doing abstract labour this week. But it's both abstract labour and concrete labour, but it takes part, that has the character of abstract labour. And what we mean by it being about abstract labour and concrete labour is not that they're two different activities, but if you consider these activities as social relations, as regards how they're linked into society, there are two distinct social relations going on here. Abstract labour is the allocation and the reallocation of labour power by the market, flowing from one use to another. Concrete labour is a particular useful activity. And connected with that in Marx's theory is the distinction between labour power and labour, which we will talk about next.